You are listening to The Tatiana Show. This show may contain adult content, language, and humor and is intended for mature audiences. If that's not you, please stop listening. Nothing you hear on The Tatiana Show is intended as financial advice, legal advice, or really anything other than entertainment. Take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Oh, and if you're listening to us on an affiliate network, the ideas and views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the network that you're listening on or of any sponsors or any affiliate products you may hear about on this show. Now that that's squared away, let's start the show.
Hey there, it's time for the show, The Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto.
What's the point of all this technology without a little love in our lives? Our hosts, Tatiana Moroz, Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and Lauren Kasovitz, have come together to bring you Proof of Love. Go to proofoflovecast.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tatiana Show. I've got Josh Shigala with me here today. Hey, Josh.
Hey. I'm back and I'm better than ever, Tatiana.
Very happy to hear that. Things are good over at Valtoro?
Yeah, they're going well. We're in the middle of a equity round, so that's always fun.
Oh, well, that seems to go on for a while sometimes, but hopefully the payout will make sense and you guys can keep growing. I've been a big fan of the project for a long time. Yeah, keeping busy with Proof of Love. So if people are listening to this show, they like the Tatiana Show, but they might also like a show about relationships, a little bit sort of for the tech community, for the disenfranchised weirdos of the libertarian community and others. Proofoflovecast.com. Go over there, check it out. We just had Julia Turansky on. We had Carrie Wedler on, and we've got a lot of cool guests coming up. So none of them are going to be as cool as this week's guest, Gene Epstein, who is the founder of the Soho Forum, and he's created this amazing community here in New York. So thank you so much for joining us today, Gene.
A pleasure, Tatiana, and I'm looking forward to spending time with you when the Soho Forum takes to the seas this coming July, otherwise known as the Contra Cruise.
I was just putting it in my calendar this morning. I had Tom on. I'm sure I'll have Bob on again, but I'm going to be joining the Contra Caribbean Cruise once again. So if people want to go to that, they can use the code Tatiana. You can get a free download of one of my albums and, get on board with us. So are you going to be doing different debates? Are you going to be sort of overseeing them? What's the plan? And are you allowed to tell us?
Well, yes. Oh, yes. I suggested when Tom invited me to come on the Contra Cruise to Alaska, I suggested to Tom that we have a Soho Forum debate on board, and Tom and Bob apparently met and discussed what important topic is that they both deeply disagree about, and it turns out that Bob Murphy is a pacifist and Tom is not. So Bob is going to defend a resolution having to do with pacifism, and Tom is going to take the negative. I would happily have hosted that debate at my Soho Forum in downtown Manhattan, but I'll be privileged to host it on board the Contra Cruise, and it will be done according to Oxford-style rules. You vote yes, no, or undecided on the resolution before the debate begins, and then yes, no, or undecided after it ends, and the side that moves the vote in his favor wins the debate. So that will be a debate on pacifism on board the Contra Cruise.
So let me ask you a question. Does it mean if you win the debate, does it mean that people now think you're morally correct, or is it that people just had a lot of bad ideas about something and you just convinced more people? Do you know what I mean? Well, I've been interested in this whole debate thing in general, so can you explain that a little more?
Well, it's not, I wouldn't say that necessarily means you're morally correct, although I can understand why you might think so in this particular context, in that Bob is arguing a moral position, although Tom is probably taking an equal position, opposite position based on morality. I've had 3 debates at the Soho Forum, always taking the negative. One of them was on the position of Adam Smith. Another was on the role of selfishness being a virtue or not. That was That was the Ayn Rand view. I took the negative, and the most recently on socialism. Now, when it came to selfishness, probably I was arguing a moral position, and I've won all 3 debates in terms of Oxford-style voting. But of course, that just means you win the Tootsie Roll. It just means who has been most successful in swaying the crowd. And the whole point about taking the baseline vote is that you can't take any credit for how many people vote in favor of you before you open your mouth. You can only take credit for how many people who've changed their minds after hearing you argue. And so, of course, it's never decisive, but it does leave a distinct impression about whose position was the most persuasive. So that's why and of course it adds to the fun. And the one-on-one debate that I always do, always one person against one person, I think heightens the drama of the evening. And I think people come not only for the intellectual stimulation of the debate, but because it is a kind of a theatrical occasion. You vote on it, there's an outcome, and there's a conflict between one person versus another. I found that the 2 against 2 kind of debate format is usually a broken model. Each person doesn't really have enough time to talk in paragraphs rather than in sound bites. And oftentimes the pairs are not really coordinated, so it tends to be a bit of a mess. The 1 versus 1, I think, is a good format, and it's worked very successfully. People pay $24 a ticket to come to the Soho Forum, $12 for students, and we generally sell out every event.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it very much. I have an idea for the Tom Woods Cruise potentially, or maybe an extension of the Soho Forum. So,
yes.
When I first became familiar with libertarianism and economics, it's a really exciting thing because you feel like you're learning so much and you feel really inspired. But when it comes to debating somebody, it's a little bit intimidating and a little bit scary. So I've taken to watching, for example, Jordan Peterson, because he's so calm when he debates somebody. Ben Shapiro, I mean, just because he's, zinging everybody. I would have liked to have seen him and Scott Horton. But do you think that there's some way that people in the average world can benefit from learning about debate? And is that something that could be taught to people?
Oh, absolutely. Well, certainly.
But for cocktail parties, not for, you know what I mean? If I'm going to be at a dinner and I want to prove a point, obviously I don't want to be a hated person, so I'd be trying to be polite. But how do I win an argument? That's what I want to do.
That's good. Well, certainly, I want to give you the full answer to that question. Certainly, I won the debate against Basco Sankara on socialism, and they had a less socialist in the audience. But I did get a little heated, and that was a bad idea, because I think I was arguing with my former self. I mean, Basco Sankara is 29 years old, and he was insisting on certain crazy ideas, and I got impatient with him. A bad idea on my part. So you might say, well, who am I to advise? Well, I'm going to be debating socialism again in November. And I'm going to count to 3 before I speak, so to make sure I completely keep my cool. But to get to your question specifically, I think everybody's ability to debate can be improved, and I think there are certain things that everyone should understand. I mean, in terms of just the sheer intellectual exchange, mainly, of course, you have to focus on what you regard as the primary issues. You have 15 minutes to make your statement, 5 minutes of rebuttal, a 5-minute summary. That's my format, which is pretty standard. You have 30 minutes for Q&A. Make sure that you know the 2 or 3 or 4 important points that have to be repeated. Expect that the other side, if you have strong arguments, is going to feebly respond or try to becloud or throw up smoke screens. That's, of course, if you're a libertarian, you're usually on the right side of things. But don't let it go. Make sure that you gently repeat the main points, because they are going to continually come up. Or if the other side keeps trying to ignore your main points, that's another reason to repeat your main points. But of course, your main points have to be sufficient to the argument that you are defending, either pro or con. I mean, that's in rough, broad brushstrokes, some of the techniques of debating. But I hasten to say, though, that some people are brilliant and not good at debating. I've approached some really brilliant people who tell me they can't stand the emotional pressure of a public debate. I know some brilliant people who, even if they did agree to debate, wouldn't be that good at it. So it is a special talent, and I don't say that one-on-one debating, of course, is the only way in which you can learn something. However, I do think that too often progressives are talking past libertarians, conservatives are talking past libertarians, and even libertarians at times are talking past each other. And so I think it's refreshing for people to enter an arena where, let's say, a progressive is going to oppose a libertarian, or even where two libertarians have it out, so that they can appreciate a clash of views between very well-informed people. You mentioned Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson. I've invited them both to come to the Soho Forum, and in neither case have they given me a response, much less said no. But I publicly declared to Jordan Peterson and to Ben Shapiro, you'll only get in touch with me at gene@thesohoforum.org. I'd like to talk to you about debating at the Soho Forum.
Interesting. Do you find that people that are good at debates are also good in private arguments with their spouse? That they keep it cool and they...
Well,
that's a great question.
I think I fall back. There's an old bit of wisdom that I learned from a friend of mine who was coincidentally head of the art department at Barron's where I worked. That you can either be right or be married. And you can't be both. And so I guess those people who are good at debates probably are very bad at having an argument with their spouse, because again, if they're good at debates, they're usually right. And if they're good at debates with their spouse, they probably shouldn't be married. So I guess it doesn't work in all cases. No.
Yeah. And did you have a closer look at what IBM was doing with an AI debate? Debating. I thought that was quite fascinating. I think.
Really? No, I haven't been following that. What interested you about that? What was it?
Well, it was interesting just on a technological front, because debating to me is one of the hardest things for humans to do properly. And the machines, we first took on basic games like War, and then chess, and then Go, which was the most one of the hardest games.
Yeah.
And now debating, because debating has such fine intricacies.
Oh gosh!
To see an AI try to tackle that is for me.
I'm sorry, I didn't even quite know precisely what you were referring to. I have to say that is slightly absurd. By the way, I just want to mention it was Robin Hanson. I don't know if you know him. I actually had him debate at my Soho Forum, but he was in AI, and he said that the fact that the supercomputers have conquered Go was no great surprise to people who were following AI, although a lot of the rest of us thought it was a big deal. But I have to say that I think it's absolutely impossible. I'm overstating it, I guess. But I was debating the virtue of selfishness. I don't think selfishness is a virtue. It's hard to imagine an AI machine debating that one. If you're debating socialism, you have to talk about the issue of freedom, the value of freedom. Hard to imagine that a machine can put its mind around that. But I guess I'm ready. I'm ready to be corrected on that. So it sounds like
it doesn't have a mind; it just has a brain.
A brain.
And a large amount of data that it can sift through.
Yeah. Well, yes. I guess you can feed the machine certain values, but really, almost any value you choose. I'm a breathing heart libertarian. I'm a libertarian because I'm both a believer in freedom, but I'm also a consequentialist. And by that I mean that the free society that consists of capitalism is very important to me. However, because it's essential to freedom. However, I cannot regard freedom as the only value. If it really were true, the Marxist view of capitalism were really true, that 90% of the population starves under capitalism, then it would be very hard for me to be a pro-capitalist libertarian, because I believe the exact opposite, that capitalism promotes the prosperity is essential to the prosperity of the broad masses of people. But all I'm saying is that the subtleties of the way in which we in different subjective ways choose our values, it's hard for me to imagine that that a machine can possibly track that. But I'm waiting to be contradicted by the machine. Who knows?
Yeah, it's an unimaginable thing. I was also very surprised that they were even tackling that. That's such a stage in this science.
Well, it's very bold of them. Look, you read Robin Hanson's book, but Robin Hanson, by the way, was pointing out to Charles Murray that the idea that the robots are going to take our jobs in 10, 20 years is just ridiculous. That automation is only proceeding at pretty much the same pace as before. And of course, I regard the idea that the robots can never take our jobs as ultimately quite ridiculous. But Robin Hanson himself has written a book about how in 100 years these M's are going to take over and maybe murder us all. And so those people who do love their machines are often, by turns brilliant and by turns mad scientists that we humanists should occasionally disdain. So we'll see.
This is a really great segue, because I did want to ask you about that exact subject of machines taking jobs. Now, I'm not some sort of Luddite that screams and shouts and wants to smash machines. I'm a lover. I'm a futurist. I'm a lover of machinery and computer science.
Yes.
But I do see things like the autonomous car, which will probably be the first true robot that will be mainstream to us all. That the self-driving car and truck really annihilates first the long-haul jobs of truck drivers, which is about 2 million drivers in the US. Then you have taxi drivers and everything else. It's about 6 million people or something. I'm not sure how many, but it's a lot. It's a large percentage of driving jobs. Now, when we say it takes all the jobs, even if machines take 50 or 60% of labor jobs, because dexterity is better, the machines are able to think now. They're not just dumb arms that pick and put, but they actually look and they can decipher and change, and they have feelings in their fingers and all sorts of things. That we are at a stage where machines can do not only unskilled labor, but quite skilled labor at a much faster and more efficient pace. And it does leave the question that everyone talks about and everyone jumps to, which is universal basic income as an answer. And I feel that this is just socialism repackaged.
Yes.
But when we're looking at things like blockchains, enabling people to create value by a third party, meaning an algorithm, it kind of looks like maybe that could be a solution where you have blockchains paying people or something like that.
Let me, in broad brushstrokes, let me just talk about the fact that, ATMs, automatic teller machines, are also pretty stunning. In the 1950s, you would walk into insurance companies and see hundreds of people sitting at desks, and they were literally called calculators. That was their job. That was the job description. And so they're fairly high-skilled work, which, by the way, I would have been terrible at. I got nothing but C's in math because I was always making careless errors. I couldn't have done it. And those people now no longer have a function because of computers, because all those calculations are done in seconds that it took hundreds of people to do in these vast corridors where people worked as calculators. So I don't regard anything of this sort as very much new. When you talk about 6 million jobs being obliterated out of 155 million people currently working, I'm still not really impressed. And on top of that, another thing in broad brushstrokes is that we either have the idea that work is disappearing because the robots are taking our jobs, or on the other hand, we're being told that we face impoverishment partly because we're not going to be able to afford to support all the baby boomers with Alzheimer's who are 85 years old, the explosion of healthcare needs, and the lack of money and the lack of resources to meet it. And then on top of that, the fact that we can no longer subsist on fossil fuels because the climate is changing and we've got to go to intermittent energy. So on the other hand, we're actually facing a situation in which labor will be scarcer than ever because we face so many risks. We need people to take care of old people, giving them a human touch. So many human needs and so much crisis on the other side, and yet we're being told that work could disappear. But the middle ground is fairly simple. The bottom line fact is that for all purposes, practical purposes, wants are infinite. The bottom line is that if you let entrepreneurs do their thing, they will find uses for people. Then uses for almost any kind of person because there's profit in doing so. The bottom line is that if the economy really is going to pour out goods based upon the fact that all you have to do is press a button and the robots will do it all for you, then probably half the goods that we buy are going to become as cheap as toothpicks and going to be given away. So perhaps in this utopia, we're going to have a lot of people who only need to work part-time for a couple of weeks of the year, as sex workers or belly dancers or people who care for old people, a real scarce commodity. I had old parents I buried who were taken care of by Jamaican ladies who had incredible patience. They may not have had entirely high IQs, but they were certainly a lot more brilliant than I at what they did. And so I have no fear that that's going to happen. I think another thing that would happen in the interim is that, of course, more and more over time, because we've had machines doing work for us, we went down from a 60-hour week to a 49-hour week. The 49-hour week, by the way, happened long before government came into play on that, and probably will go down to from now about a 38-hour week, possibly to a 4-day week, a 3-day weekend, and maybe vacations, because people do make a choice between labor and leisure, and when they're making a lot more money, they choose leisure. Now, of course, that will mean that the leisure industry is going to double and triple and quadruple in value in terms of the resource it will need, and that's usually labor intensive as well. But let me return to the bottom line facts. Once and for all practical purposes, infinite. Entrepreneurs are always looking for opportunities to employ labor profitably, and I think that those two factors will take care of the rest.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make. There was an experiment where a fully automated hotel was opened up in Japan, where you'd have like a dinosaur robot at the front desk greeting you, and all sorts of ridiculousness, but also just robots cleaning everything, and you just never see a human. And what people said as they came out for the exit interview, they said, look, I found it really interesting and it was fun, but I wouldn't do it again. I felt very alone. I need other people. I like interacting with other people.
Well, that is a key point. It's a key point, because what happens is indeed that the market serves people, and people generally like to employ people. I mean, why do we need to watch people in a daredevil fashion go down a ski slope during the Winter Olympics? Why can't we just have robots doing it, and the robots would do it far more adeptly and far more excitedly? No, we find the excitement of watching people doing it, and why do might we need people to have bedside manner rather than a robot? Maybe the robot could do it, but obviously people would then be at a premium, and so there's plenty of demand for people. And of course, I could get completely off color and talk about sex work and massage and all the rest of it. I actually use a massage chair at home. My wife likes to have personal human massage, as do many people. And so I have no fear about any of those things. Let's talk in another couple hundred years before we start worrying about any of those things, about the robots taking all our jobs, when the market usually finds things for people to do.
Well, I would be more worried about the current policies in place as well. I mean, if people are implementing a minimum wage of $15,
yes,
and now there's a whole bunch of robots just waiting to take our jobs.
Oh yes,
What would you say about the effects of the of the minimum wage raise, and how long would it take to repair that? Because obviously that's a bad idea, but what's that going to ripple out like, and how long is it going to take them to, I mean, are they just going to break the economy? Is that the plan?
Well, I think
good for small businesses.
Yeah. Well, I think there are two answers to that. Certainly, I do recommend you listen to the recent EconTalk by Russ Roberts, in which he interviewed, I forget the guy's name, an economist who conducted on local city money from the city government of Seattle a study of the effects of the $15 minimum wage in Seattle, and with very careful analysis, he did indeed find what was unsurprising, which is that it has, as you just suggested, eliminated many of the low-skilled jobs. It shafts the people who are most vulnerable, the lowest skilled people, the people who bust the tables. They're the ones who lose their jobs, and then their potential to rise in the hierarchy and get better jobs at the same restaurant or a better job at a different restaurant, that is cut off. And so that is tragic and ugly. But the saving grace is something else, which is that if you actually look, and I know this personally from New York because my son Gene Epstein is a researcher at Reason, and he's done work on the enforcement of the minimum wage, and he finds that there's very little enforcement, and that as a practical matter, the politicians really don't want to enforce it. And so I believe that even in Seattle, what this guy was missing is that maybe the low skilled weren't being eliminated but maybe the low skilled was simply going back into the underground economy. Not the best circumstance for them, but at least it means they continue to work. So it's not all bleak. Because this is a law. That's the cardinal fact we have to recognize about the minimum wage. It's a law that is honored in the breach. The politicians really do not want to enforce it because they know that a lot of small business people are going to get pretty upset. And so it often happens. It doesn't, of course, obviously, if you're McDonald's, if you're a brand name company, you can't get around it. But smaller firms can do so, like car wash companies, for example. So it's not that bleak. However, you are quite right that the progressives are going to have their way and eliminate low-skilled work if they keep raising the minimum wage. One hopes that they begin to see the light, that they begin to understand ultimately that when something costs more, people do tend to buy less of it. And that despite what they might say about supposedly predatory capitalists, when most of these capitalists who run places that pay the minimum wage are not exactly that rich and have no real market power, they might begin to back off. As indeed, on a related point, some cities are backing off on zoning restrictions that make it impossible to build cheap housing, make it impossible to expand the market for housing. So it's not completely hopeless, but you are certainly right that it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy if they keep raising the minimum wage and make it impossible for people to be employed who don't have very high skills.
I think the other equation to this is not only minimum wage, but sound money. And, the ability for people to save in something that will hold its value at least against other commodities like grains and milk.
Yes.
What happens in a more roboticized, for instance, there will always be jobs, right? As you stated,
yes.
There will always be different types of work. But what happens is usually there is this middle section of transitional periods where a truck driver has driven his whole life. He hasn't got time to study because he's taking care of a steering wheel for 8 hours a day. And so when that job does get taken, they're sort of left to do nothing. And if they haven't saved in a sound money, then their savings get either inflated away or they just haven't had a chance to save because it's constantly on the edge of an inflationary pressure.
Yes. Well, I mean, there are two parts to that statement which I want to respond to, and of course it's very important what you just said. First, it's very, just begin with in terms of what you were saying with respect to the autonomous vehicle, as they like to call it, in their classy way. I know a kid who's on the front lines writing software for the autonomous vehicle, and I have to say, I asked him, how far along are you with dealing with winter? and snow. And to my astonishment, he says, well, we haven't quite gotten to that part yet. So I'm not sure how fast this is going to come in, but usually it's phased in. So it's not going to happen abruptly. And the abrupt change, of course, is usually the change imposed by government with business cycles. That really does happen abruptly. But if only the government would lift restrictive licensure, which makes it hard for people to transition to other professions. And I'm talking about restrictive licensure on being a lawyer or working in a hospital, for example. People can learn those things very quickly on the job. In 6 months, you can learn how to do divorce law, even if you have barely a high school education. And so we wish that they would only lift those restrictions to ensure labor mobility. But you are quite right with respect to being able to save with a stable money. Ironically, the real problem has been for most people, because I do happen to believe that price inflation, strictly price inflation, has been relatively slow over the last 15 to 20 years. So that hasn't been a huge problem. The big problem, of course, is that the central bank has been maintaining interest rates that are so low that your savings cannot keep up even with that modest inflation. Just look at, what old people tend to invest in, or conservative people invest in, the standard bank certificate of deposit. The 5-year CD or the 10-year CD or the 1-year CD, they pay ridiculously low interest rates even now because of the policies of the Federal Reserve. And so that's been the real problem. And on top of that, it's been pushing some of these people into taking on risks in the stock market that they're not really fit for. So that's all unfortunate. But you were quite right that what we need is a stable money. And of course, with a stable money, with Bitcoin in particular, we would have something similar to what we had in the late 19th century, where prices every year were actually falling, so that you could even have the option of putting your money in the proverbial mattress or the safe deposit box, earning no interest at all, and it would appreciate in value. Of course, you wouldn't do that because there would be a rate of interest paid, which would enhance the value of your money. And so, indeed, the stable money, and of course, a stable money that has a positive interest rate, which of course would always occur on the free market, all of those are very important things. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic. I feel that we are really on a precipice here with Bitcoin. When I say Bitcoin, I mean the concept of digital currency that controlled by a single party, but by a predefined law.
That's voluntary for the most part. I mean, unless governments start implementing it at the force of a gun, cryptocurrency is an opt-in option.
Exactly. And why I say it's a precipice, because it allows us to experiment with economic theory quite fast in a voluntary fashion without gulags. And this is a really interesting phenomena that we haven't really had in a vast distance in a global society. We've had like little countryside towns maybe that have tried a different type of economic theory out. But really, for mass economic tests, for instance, a communistic or a socialist, really you need a dictatorship to enforce these. And this is one thing that I find fascinating about crypto, is that you can test out these economic theories. And I've said this before on the show quite often, and I feel that one thing we're getting out of it is data which is empirical rather than just, theoretical. So, for instance, we had one coin which was called a Frei coin back about it was a long time ago. It was one of the first altcoins. And the theory was, let's have an automatic demurrage fee, meaning while people hold it too long, it will tax and redistribute itself if you hold it too long and don't spend it.
Oh my gosh, okay.
So it was an interesting theory, right? So everyone was spouting how fantastic this is because it'll get the economy moving, people will be spending.
Yeah, that's what the government was going to do that too. By the way,
right. But we saw, just quickly finish up,
sure.
was this run up in price where everyone was hyped about the idea, And then, boom, a massive crash, never recovered, flatlined, because at the end of the day, the free market went, you know what? I don't want to hold a token that's going to be stolen from me by an algorithm. And
well, I could have. Okay, let me say, I came to appreciating cryptocurrency a little bit late because, of course, I was trained in Misesian economics with respect to the use of money, and so I've learned that indeed, actually, it's Satoshi Nakamoto. Sorry, Satoshi Nakamoto. He apparently had read some Austrian economics as well, and I was refreshed by that. But I do feel that now I'm at a stage where guys like you, who are obviously, and my son and my stepson, and a lot of people I meet in the Bitcoin community who are twice as smart as I am about the technicalities of it, still have to be reminded of the verities, the eternal verities about human behavior with respect to money that Mises taught us, and through Rothbard and through others, that essentially it is a network commodity, and that people that there will generally be one or two currencies at most flourishing once it actually becomes a medium of exchange. Once it becomes a medium of exchange, obviously, I'm going to want to hold the currency that most people accept, and most people are going to want to hold the currency that most others accept, and they want to accept the currency that most others accept, and therefore, very quickly, once cryptocurrency becomes money, it will be dominated by one money, and that is actually already shown in the global marketplace, where the dollar is king. In the global marketplace, the balkanization of money is done by nation states, but in fact, the dollar is generally the medium of exchange for trade in the world marketplace, because traders have short pencils. They want to trade it in one money because it's a network commodity, and that's why oil. It's not just oil that's valued in dollars. Virtually anything else in the global marketplace is valued in dollars. So we already have that fact manifested even today. And then, because it is just a medium of exchange, it's not a store of value. That's also been a misnomer. Obviously, it's now a speculative instrument. The cryptocurrency is a speculative instrument because we don't know what its value is going to be. It's not yet achieved its status as a medium of exchange. And so that's why it is, so to speak, a store of value. But in an advanced economy, you don't store value in a medium of exchange. You store value in stocks and bonds, in financial instruments, because you can make far more money if you put your money into those instruments rather than into money itself. Money will appreciate in value because of falling prices, but you can greatly enhance that by putting your money into stocks and bonds. Of course, you might speculate in art, you might speculate in land, all of that, but those are the value objects for money. And so I find there's an awful lot of misnomers being stated at the same time that I applaud all that is going on and all that you obviously know so much about, Josh, with respect to the way it's happening. Where I have hope for it in terms of the ultimate outcome is that I do think there's a fiscal crisis of the state that's brewing. I do think that the federal government is going to have increasing difficulty meeting its debt commitments. And I see the potential, the danger and risk and possibilities of the dollar becoming extremely unstable in value about 15 to 20 years down the road. And once that happens, when the last time it happened in the 70s and 80s, that's when gold soared in price. And I think that if it does happen again, which I think is fairly likely, then Bitcoin or some cryptocurrency might begin to become the preferred medium of exchange. And that's where there might be a hope for it to be actually something we use as money. So that's my hope for cryptocurrency. Yeah,
the big revelation now that Facebook is coming out with Facebook Coin, and it's a really interesting one for me because I'm would consider myself a competition maximalist,
Yeah. Okay.
And I find that the trouble with what I think Facebook will come out with is some sort of centralized. It's kind of a PayPal almost, and which won't really evolutionize anything. It'll basically just sort of make it a bit more usable. I think Facebook is actually in a really good position to come out with a true decentralized currency that is named after it, and it sort of, maybe has a lion's share of the coin in the back end to be able to release that like a central bank. And it would be kind of an interesting, also in economic theory, to see private companies issuing currency again that are globally recognized, because you talked about network effects before, and if Facebook has anything, it has a large, very, very, very large network effect.
Okay, but Josh, you do recognize that two things. Number one, that while what you just mentioned is a possible experiment, the problem that Satoshi recognized is that if I were to bring out Epstein's, or you were to bring out Josh's and try to market them, then the only problem is, can Josh and Epstein be trusted not to inflate the currency that they've issued, because it obviously greatly enhances their own position in the world to do so. And so can they be trusted? Well, maybe Josh can be trusted, and maybe Epstein can be trusted, but can Josh Jr. be trusted? Can the company that Josh bequeaths to others, Joshites, be trusted? And so that was the ultimate problem. And that's why Satoshi brilliantly designed something that inherently can be trusted and that cannot expand beyond 21 million units. So I have my doubts about those things. I think that you're speaking a little bit too much in terms of the speculation of what we're discovering. I only suggest to you that I myself bridle at the accusation that on the free market you get balkanized money. On the free market, and manifestly, as I just said, you actually just get the dollar that everybody wants to use because it's the currency at hand with which to trade in the global marketplace.
But do you think our market
governments that balkanize? See me? I'm sorry.
Right. I mean, I think when I think of all those markets, I think of them as highly manipulated and also at the force of a gun. Are we getting a truly free market baseline?
Well, you think the market for oil is highly manipulated? I certainly agree with you that is cartelized to some degree by OPEC. But I don't think it's highly manipulated. If it were really highly manipulated, then the price of oil would not have crashed from $110 to $30 to $40 a barrel. The price of oil is not exactly where Russia wants it. It's not where the OPEC wants it. But of course, I'm obviously not talking about how I glory in tariffs or any of the issues with respect to free trade. I am saying, however, that if you look at the price of wheat or the price of most other things, I don't find those prices manipulated insofar as that's concerned. But I'm not talking, I certainly grant you that nation states are very deeply involved often in interfering with world trade. I'm only saying that in the private marketplace, when people privately trade in oil or buy wheat or buy any of those commodities, they deal in the dollar. I'm only using that as an illustration to illustrate that just the cardinal fact, which when we understand in terms of just the logic of human action, to use the title of Mises's book, that there is a strong tendency. Why did gold dominate? Why did gold and then maybe secondarily silver become the money of choice? Because everybody wants to hold the money that everybody else wants to use. Everybody gravitates to the most universally accepted money. And that's why more than likely there will be at most one or two currencies if we were able to abolish the dominance of the nation state over currencies. There will almost inevitably be one or two currencies dominating. There will be little enclaves. There will be American Express traveler's checks. There will be this and that, but by and large it would become a much more rational global marketplace where if we travel to Europe or travel to Japan, we won't be exchanging our money for yen or for euros. We'll basically be using the same money because that's the convenient way in which people trade. But you perhaps read about the British prisoner of war camp that famously they were given care packages and there was suddenly a trade in the contents of each package because not everybody wanted the banana or the cheese or whatever else was in the care packages. And so very quickly, they started to use cigarettes as money. Cigarettes became the established money, just naturally arising. Everybody traded in cigarettes because virtually everybody smoked, but of course it was the most universally accepted commodity, as gold was once. And gold, look, there are debates about this. Maybe gold will again become our money if the established monies collapse. But I'm only suggesting to you that, Josh, that the experiments you're talking about probably are the outcome is probably fairly predictable, because we know more about money than many people seem to think. And of course, I don't blame them, because many people who've been raised on the neoclassical myths about money, that we need a central bank to control the money supply, that we need a bunch of philosopher kings running our central banks to meet and control the money supply. All of those myths and the inability of most economists to have in their mind a model of how a free market and money would work, that's been a problem. Getting back to what you were just saying, Tatiana, interestingly, the mainstream economists do have an idea in their mind about how free global trade would work. We don't have free global trade, but at least they have an understanding of it. And on the basis of that understanding, they can object to tariffs, and they can object to government interference as deleterious. What they don't have in their mind is a model of how a free market and money would work, but all they have to do is read the Austrian literature, and they'll get a pretty good approximation of what that is like and how that would work. The idea of it being a network commodity. I have my doubts again about any particular company bringing out a medium of exchange, again because of the temptation to inflate the money supply and the lack of trust on the part of most people about whether they'll keep control over it. That indeed was the brilliant solution of Satoshi, to make sure that whatever we do, it will never be more than 21 million units.
Well said, well said.
Yeah.
Well, Gene, I think this is a good time to leave them wanting more. This has been really interesting. And I know that you've done a lot of different talks at the Soho Forum around Bitcoin. Tell us a little bit before we go, what's coming up on the docket? Because even if you miss one of these, you can check them out online, because you guys release them in partnership with Reason. So if you can make it, that's great. If you can't, you can also check out some old episodes, which I think is great for getting new people out.
We had a debate on Bitcoin, and it's gotten the video of the debate has gotten more than 450,000 views so far.
Wow.
We're having another debate on Bitcoin when is it going to be? It's in the fall. Look it up at thesohoforum.org, and it's going to be George Selgin at Cato, who is a free market guy in money and very informed, but he doubts that Bitcoin, as formulated, is going to make it as money. I'm probably going to butcher his name, Safieddine Ammous, who's written a very good book, a flawed book, but very good on Bitcoin, is going to defend Bitcoin at this debate that's going to be held it's either in August or September. But this may be too late to air, but this coming Monday, that's March 18th, we're going to have a debate on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And in April, we're going to have a debate on climate change. And so go into thesohoforum.org. The other mission of the Soho Forum, I should emphasize, is to have a party, to have people meet each other. It takes place at the Subculture Theater, capacity of about 200. And there is an open bar that serves wine and soft drinks. My wife, in fact, prepares the food. So as soon as you arrive, there's free food and a bar. And after the debate ends, at around 8:15, people stick around for about another half hour to 45 minutes and socialize. And so that's the other mission of the Soho Forum, for people to meet each other, for libertarians to meet each other, for libertarians to meet progressives. And that's in downtown Manhattan, usually in the middle of the month, usually on a Monday evening. We found it's a good evening to do it because you compete with very few other events on a Monday evening in New York City. That's thesohoforum.org. Hope you can make it.
Me too. Wow, I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, it's been really cool. And I have to say that the spread of snacks initially is really, really impressive.
My wife will be pleased to hear that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was surprised that she did it. I wanted to burst in with an applause or something because it's really good.
She's an abstract painter and a native of Tokyo. And somehow or other, it's just fun for her to cater our events. And So it's worked out quite well.
That's wonderful. Great. And so we'll also see you on the Contra Krugman cruise.
Yes.
So guys, if you want to go, use Tatiana as the code. You get a free download of my album with your ticket. Don't miss out. This is a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Alaska. Any words on that, Gene?
Oh, well, I'm looking forward to, to maybe supporting you and doing a duet with you, Tatiana, because, of course, like so many others, I did appear in high school and college. I was a character actor, and I did sing, but only in character roles. So I guess you'll have to use me however you want. I'm looking forward to your performing, looking forward to the debate on pacifism between Bob and Tom, and to having a lot of fun on the Contra Cruise. And Josh, a real pleasure talking to you.
Dankeschön, Herr Epstein.
Okay. Thanks again. Okay.
All righty. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate it. Go to thetatianashow.com. Follow along to our social media streams. Tell your friends. Go on to iTunes and give it a positive rating. We'll see you next time. And make sure you check out proofoflovecast.com, my new show about crypto life, but more focused on relationships and personal improvement. It has something for everyone. So proofoflovecast.com. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. We gotta think and reflect and use lots of intellect with our hearts when we work together. I know that it can be so hard out there, looking all around and saying that life ain't fair. So that is why we will fight and stay up late at night, listening to the Tatiana Show. Thank you for listening to the Tatiana Show. Please follow us on Twitter at Queen Tatiana or on Facebook and Instagram at Tatiana Moroz Music. More episodes can be found at thetatianashow.com, and make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. The Tatiana Show has been brought to you by CryptoMediaHub.com, a boutique marketing and PR agency for Bitcoin and beyond.